Hey everyone, and welcome to The Borderline Man. In my new and very interesting line of work, I've started to realize that a lot of the labels used, especially here on the internet and by me, are dated. They are really, really dated. And they're also quite geographically, more or less, how should I put it, non-existent sometimes. Here where I live in Sweden, the syndrome called borderline personality disorder is basically non-existent. It's replaced with APES, and which is a acronym for emotional instability personality syndrome. And so far so good. But now, even this is also changing really fast. And one of the new things is that all of these personality disorders are being merged into one disorder called simply personality disorder. And instead, these classical disorders like borderline, like narcissistic, histrionic, and all kinds of classical disorders which people identify themselves with or others are being relabeled or even removed completely. And the logic for this is very sound. If you do a personality disorder test, a general one, you will get marks for what certain traits you have. Let's put it in a simpler term. Let's say you have a list of these classical disorders. If you do a test for having some issue with yourself, you are going to end up with points not only in the disorder in which people are trying to diagnose you, like borderline. You will probably get marks and points in other disorder as well. It's very uncommon, actually, that people have no points in other disorders. And in the past, this has been just simply dismissed, and if you're lucky, you could get a separate diagnosis in a later stage where your other diagnosis is taken into consideration as well. And you will get several diagnoses. You will get perhaps multiple ones. And the problem is that instead of looking at the big picture, you are looking at small details. And very often, the treatment and the things to take in consideration is in the big picture. A lot better than it is in the details. Now, borderline is one of the few, I think this is the only one, that is still remaining as a bit of a separate thing. Because it is a bit different than the others. I'm not sure why. I haven't looked into the details on why borderline is considered separate. The seriousness of it is, of course, one aspect, I think. Borderline is very dangerous for the individual suffering from it. You can become quite prone to being suicidal and all kinds of horrible things. And you can also develop, as I already mentioned, psychotic stages. If you're dissociative enough, if you have real big issues with your own sense of self and identity, and you feel really, not really there in the moment, in the present, or anything. Everything feels unreal. This is a trait that is actually a form of psychosis. So it is important to still take a very good look at borderline as something special in all of this. But I suggest that anyone listening to this take a look at this personality disorder, ICD-11 international classification. I can't remember what the D is now, just because I'm saying this. But if you look at this, you will probably see a long and thorough explanation on why and how things are now defined with traits rather than disorders. And yeah, I think it's a sound and good thing. I will continue to use the classical terms here, but I will probably try to incorporate and use and discuss and analyze things from the umbrella term, which is personality disorder, because that is where modern psychiatry is headed towards. It's going to be the dominant terminology in the future. Things take time. People identify things at a various degree, and you can't just change a label and expect people to not use the other one. I mean, when I attended a conference here at my workplace, the psychiatrists there, they still use the phrase borderline, even despite it's not supposed to be used here anymore. Simply because someone has decided that the term is filled with stigma and bad history, and they decided on using a new term to change this. I don't think I agree with that. I don't think you can relabel a condition and expect people simply to just treat you better because of this. I think that's a bit naive, and you're also not taking in consideration the new problems which arise from this, where people struggle with understanding things when we don't use a common language. So, and interesting enough, a lot of psychiatrists still use the term borderline. And with the new ICD-11, things are going to once again be called borderline when it comes to this trait, because it is simply, better as a term, not in the sense of descriptive and so on. It is, I don't know if people know this, but borderline is its origin, it has to do with it being on the border of being treatable and non-treatable. A very hard to define condition, in other words. And the emotional instability most certainly defines it a little bit better. But I think I like the borderline term for various reasons. It's easier to remember once, but it's also not that bad of a description either, because it is interesting with borderline that it is both in many cases treatable and in some cases it's not. So it really is there on the border of two things, which is of course something a lot of disorders are, but this one is quite distinct on this point. If you're suffering from bipolar syndrome, I'm quite sure you can never completely get better. You can get better, but you can't be cured. Let's put it that way. So, yeah, it is hard to describe things when the terminology changes and shifts, but I think this is for the good. I think the umbrella term personality disorder is better in many cases, and then you define the trait afterwards instead. I think this will help a lot of people, probably make them get the right treatment from the healthcare system, hopefully, at least. Well, thanks for listening, and until the next video, have a good one.